All right, for this section, we are talking about fractions and then ultimately how to reduce fractions for the assignment that we had. But I'm just going to start kind of going through these notes. So what is a fraction? A fraction is a part of a whole or a part of one. So when we think of something that's whole or one thing, that would be a unit of one. So let's say I have a pencil. This is my bad drawing of a pencil. Here's the eraser. All right, that would be one pencil. Well, if I break it in half, so then I have this part of the pencil, and then this part of the pencil, we now have a part of a whole. So this would be part of a pencil, and this would be the other part of a pencil. All right, so this would be one whole pencil, this would be half a pencil, that would be half a pencil. So basically that's what a fraction is. It's a part of a whole. All right, and when you're looking at how a fraction is set up, it's made up of two parts. You have what's called the denominator, which is down there, denominator. And then you have the top number, which would be the numerator. All right, so that's the terminology that goes with it. You can see it down here, numerator and denominator. All right, so the denominator is basically how many pieces a fraction is, and the numerator is how many pieces of that whole part that you are comparing to. So in this case, this is one whole pencil, so the numerator and the denominator would be the same. So such as your whole numbers here, anytime the numerator and denominator, it equals 1. So 2 over 2 would equal 1. 6 over 6 would equal 1. If we have a 17 parts of that 17 would equal 1. You could make up any fraction you want. I could say 105 over 105 would be equivalent to one whole. All right, now typically fractions are portions of a whole, so this would be 3 parts of 4, 1 part of 2, or half. If something was 31 parts and you had 27 of them, that would not be a whole thing, but it would be a portion of it. Decimals right here, if this would be a whole number here, but anything over here, that would also be considered part of a whole, that it can be written as a fraction, and we're going to talk about that later. All right, so that is a fraction. It's basically a part of a whole. Whole numbers, anytime that your top number is the same as your bottom number, it's representing one whole thing. Now we also have two types of fractions that we're going to talk about. One's an improper fraction and one is a mixed number. So an improper fraction or a mixed number is basically when you have more than one of something. So you might have 2 wholes and then a part of a whole. So like in this case we have 5 wholes and then 2/3 of another whole. Like if I had one more third here, that would make that a 3 over 3, which would make that 6 whole things. But in this case, it's 5 and a little bit more. Over here, we have what's called an improper fraction, and that is basically when your numerator, which is the top number, is bigger than the denominator, which is your bottom number. Now, I prefer improper fractions. I think as we are manipulating fractions and working with numbers, I think improper fractions will make life easier for us. All right, not to say mixed numbers are bad, they're just not my favorite. So one way we can make a mixed number into an improper fraction when we're doing future assignments for math and you want to kind of make it easier to manipulate things, is to change these into improper fractions. All right, so the way that we do that, and you can do this kind of like one step on a calculator if you really want to, is to take the whole, multiply the whole number by the denominator, so the number on the bottom, so in this case 5 times 3, and then we add the numerator to that. So if you look over here at your first step, I did 3 times 5, 5 times 3, and then we add the 2. All right, and then we put that answer over the original denominator. In this case, the original denominator is 3. So if I type this into the calculator, I can just do 3 times 5 plus 2, and that's how I get my 17. And then I write my original denominator, which is 3, and I have that as the 3 there. So that's how I get that. So you can go ahead and pause this and try this example, or just keep watching along. All right, so using these directions, I'm going to do 4 times 3. And then I'm going to add that numerator, so plus 3. You can see it up here in this calculator, it kind of gives it to you. So that's 15. So that would be 15, and then on the denominator, we have to put the original denominator. In this case, it's 4. So 15 over 4 is equivalent to 3 3/4. Now when you're looking at, going from a decimal point, equivalence and that, so I can say 3 divided by 4. Oh, that gives me a decimal. It's 0.75. So this would be 3.75, because that 3 is our whole. Whereas if I take 15 and I divide it by 4, and that's one way we can deal with fractions. 15 divided by 4, and this is how we make them into decimals, which we'll talk about later, that also equals 3.75. So you can see how those are the same value. All right, so now we're going to talk about how to reduce fractions. So a lot of times you might have a fraction or equivalent fraction that is bigger, and we want to put it in its simplest form. All right, so how we reduce fractions based on what we've done, I'm going to show you the long way, and then I'm going to show you the quick way using a calculator. All right, so if there is a mixed number, we change it to improper fraction, because I love improper fractions better than mixed numbers. So that's our first step that we would do. Then we're going to write the prime factorization of each number, the numerator and the denominator. All right, so 12, if I did 12, so we would have, breaking it down as our factor tree. This is why we want to be good at factor trees. So 2 and 6, 2 and 3, that's how we get the 2 times 3. 32, we would be 2 and 16, 2 and 8, 2 and 4, 2 and 2, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how we get the 5 2's on the bottom. So you're essentially writing your fraction as prime factorizations. The next step would be divide out all common factors, because if it's the same number on top and the same number on bottom, that just equals 1. So over here you can see how we divided these two out. All right, there's nothing more in common in the top and the bottom. Once you do that for step 4, you multiply the numbers left over for each of the numerator and the denominator. So in this example, all we have left is a 3, so that remains a 3. And on the bottom we have 2 times 2 times 2, which then equals 8. So our reduced fraction from 12/32 would be 3/8. If you use this way, you will always end up with a fraction in lowest terms. All right? So I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this. We're going to start by this one. So 16 over 24, we're going to break them down. So 16, we're going to break down 16, and that's going to be 2 and 8. Use your calculator on this if you're not comfortable with it yet. 2 and 4, 2 and 2. So 16 is 4 2's. So I'm going to write 4 2's here. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 16. That's on the top. Now I got to break down 24. That's going to be our bottom number. So if I break down 24, 2 and half of that is 12. And again, on your calculator, you keep dividing out 2's as long as it's even. So 24 divided by 2 gives me 12. Divide that by 2 gives me 6. Divide 6 by 2, that gives me 2 and 3. So I have 3 2's and a 3 as my prime factorization. So 3 2's and a 3. All right, so that is going through step 2. Step 3, divide out our common terms. Well, what's in the same in the top of the bottom? This 2 divides out with that 2. That would divide out with that. And that would divide out with that. And what do we have left? Well, there's nothing to multiply on the bottom or the top, so our final answer would just be 2/3. All right, so that is kind of the long way of how you would do it with using prime factorization. Now, depending on the calculator you have, a lot of calculators have a function to where we can put them in lowest terms. And we are going to use that as well. So on the website, there's this Desmos.com scientific calculator. This is one that I have posted that we can use in class. I'm going to go ahead and make that half my screen, and I'm going to bring the notes up over here. Okay, so one thing we can do is to use a calculator that has a fraction button to try to reduce. So on this calculator, I'll try to get it in the screen here, I'm going to break down 100 over 120. So very simply over here, there's a nice little fraction button here. So I can type in that, and I can type in 100. And on the bottom, I can put 120. And here it shows you the answer of that fraction. So that fraction, 100 over 120, is actually 8.333 repeating. Now if you want to see what that would be as a fraction reduced, you just click on this button. And that gives you 5 over 6. So you can also use this calculator to help reduce them. I want to make sure you have the tools to reduce final answers at the end of the day. So if you want to do it the long way, you can break down 100 to 2 and 50, 2 and 25, 5 and 5. So 100 would be 2 2s and 2 5s. Now I got to break down 120. So I'm getting kind of jumbled over here. So I can use 2 and 60, 2 and 30, 2 and 15, and then 3 and 5. So I have 3 2s, a 3 and a 5. 2, 2, 2, 3, 5. Now we divide out what's in common. Those 2's divide out. This 2 divides out. This 5 divides out with that 5. And what do we have left? On the top we have a 5. And on the bottom we have 2 times 3, which is 6. And you can see that answer over here is 5 6. So you can do it the long way with calculators. I think it's good to practice that and understand how they reduce, but we can also use the calculator to help us out in that area.